Lily. Today's topic is the story of the San Jose Chinatown. So I know people in this room come from all over the world. So maybe you might need more information about the San Jose first. The San Jose is the third largest city in California and the 10th largest in the United States. It belongs to Santa Clara County, which is the heart of the Silicon Valley. So first of all, so Lily got a lot of hats. So Hong just introduced her already. So I would like to know, could you please tell us a little bit what happened in San Jose on May 4th, 1887?
Okay. There were actually 5 Chinatown in San Jose, which I didn't know before. There were first Market Street Chinatown from 1866 to 1870. And then there was a Vine Street Chinatown, 1870 to 72. And then second Market Street Chinatown, 1871 to 87. And Wooden Mill Chinatown from 87 to 1902. And the very last one is called Hellenville, also known as the 6th Street Chinatown from 1887 to 1931. And the story we are talking about is about 1887 Chinatown. On the May 4th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when everyone was in the gambling house to listen to the announcement of the lottery. And the fire was set up in 4 or 5 different corners in Chinatown. And but during that time, the Chinatown has a very strong fire department. So they constantly rehearsal, and they also have a Chinese tower, Chinese water tower, which contain water for the because the fire was set up, all the time. So they were trying to prevent that. But during that time, the water tank was all drained out. Okay. And very strangely, the white businessman has raised their fire insurance 2 weeks before the fire. So during that time, there were about 1,000 people lived there. So instantly, about 1,000 people, they were without a home. So that's what happened in the May 4th at the 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Lily. So the first time I heard this story, I was shocked. I guess lots of people don't know that before. Like me, even I live in San Jose. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to learn it by writing this book. As we know, Lily has published 3 books in Chinese and 1 book in English. So the English book named Fire Scar told this story about the San Jose Chinatown. So how did you know this, and what led you to that story?
Okay, I didn't know this at all. It was just one day a friend of mine asked me to go out for lunch in Fairmont Hotel. So she was running late, and I was waiting at the corner of the hotel. And then I saw this marker, and it has Chinese written on it, and it's in a very large font. I was shocked because this is a hotel. Why would there be Chinese written on the wall? And I looked into it, and I was very surprised and realized that this is the location. This is the location of Chinatown, an old Chinatown in 1887. So, and then after that, I wasn't able to concentrate to have lunch. I wanted to find out because I was always wondering how come there are so many Chinese in South Bay, but we have to go to San Francisco for Chinatown. How come we didn't have a Chinatown here? And turned out there used to be a Chinatown here, and then it was right here in that such a beautiful modern hotel. And what was the reason that the Chinese got cast out? So after I went home, I sent out messages and on my Facebook and through multimedia and ask people around me if anybody know about this. And turned out I asked over 100 people. Only one person told me that he heard it from his grandfather. So it turned out nobody know about this. So I don't know if nobody know about this or this people don't care about this. So I started to do my research. And throughout the research, I found this book by Jim Fraser. He wrote a book about Driven Out, the Forgotten War against Chinese. So in that book, it clearly states what happened. And also, not only that, it happens in many other places. There used to be 250 Chinatown just in California alone. And the Chinatown, we call that Roundup because, during that time, it was just wooden building. All of them got driven out, all of them. They got 2 hours of notice, asked them to leave. If they don't leave, they kick their window, they kick down their door and drag them out and burn their house. And the difference between San Jose Chinatown and the other city is that San Jose people are very strong and they are all together and they are very large number. They are the largest Chinatown south of San Francisco. So they probably don't think this is they could cast them out with the same way. So that's the way they did it. On the May 4th of 1887, while everybody is in the gambling house, hearing the announcement of the lottery winner. So that's when they set out the fire and driven out all of the Chinese instantly, over 1,000 people without a home. So then that's the location for such a beautiful hotel. Yeah.
Thank you, Lily. Actually, we all the moderator we have a meeting before the event, and I know our co-moderators have some questions for you as well. So I will pass the microphone to Hong. Hong, please. Hong, you can ask your question.
Okay, very good. I have one question. So in your book, two questions. So is your book a historical book or is it a fiction book? And who's in your book?
Okay, that's a very good question. Because I was reading Jane Fraser's book, the book is very thick. She collects a lot of evidence and diaries and records and even the court records. I believe she spent over 10 or 20 years to write a book. I don't have that amount of time. So I thought about this. I want to spread this story out. So how can I finish a book with the shortest time and tell the story? So I decided to write this book as a historical fiction. I use a lot of real event to create the roles in the book. So whatever happened to this character, these are the actual event. Okay, but the character are fictions. So I put a story together. So it took me 1 year to write this book. So I have about 20 characters in the book. Each character has a background, such as for 1949, they went to the gold mountain to dig the gold, and some of them are miner, and some of them are fruit pickers, and they are all coming out from a real story. Especially I have twins. They are from the railroad. There's a railroad story, and also there's a female character. During that time, all the female come to this country, they end up to be a prostitute. So she's got a really thick story about her. So that's how about I put this together, the story together. It's using the real actual event with the fiction of the character to put a book together. So this is a historical fiction.
Right. I also I for that matter, I researched a bit online. So there was some excavation to dig up under on Market Street, right downtown San Jose, and that ended up with the Chinese Historical Museum and the Stanford Museum, and I think I put that on my profile as well if anybody wants to take a look. So with that, Lily, can you are you familiar with the exhibition that ended up with the Archaeological Society? Stanford.
Yeah, that actually CHCP is the Chinese Historical Cultural Project. That helped me a lot to write this book. Even though there's a Wushen Gong, there's a place called Wushen Gong in the Kelly Park. I went over there, but everything is closed during the pandemic. But it does help me to write the story. I wrote some fictions what happened inside the museum, but I actually personally had never been inside yet because it's not open yet. And then I found out there's an archaeology project by Stanford. So they really dig out some artifact from right below Fairmont Hotel. So the project name is called There Was a Chinatown Here. So there was really a Chinatown there, and then you can just go to the CHCP website to see all the artifacts. So this really, really happened. It's just I feel very sad that how little that people know. So that's the reason I wrote this book. I want to spread it out and let people know that we really had a Chinatown here, and it was burned out.
Right. I'd like to, at this point, I'd like to open up the room a little bit, and open up the room to folks who joined us, and actually also, and thank you for stepping up to the stage as well. Jamie, I'd like to invite you here. Any questions or any comment? Have you heard of any Chinatown in San Jose before? Where are you for that matter, Jamie? Are you in the San Francisco Bay Area? Jamie, are you there?
I can.
Maybe we can pass the next person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I passed Liesl actually. So Liesl, also thanks for joining us also tonight, and thanks for stepping up to the stage. Any thoughts or any questions, Liesl, about Chinatown and San Jose, or about the book that Lily just wrote, or any questions?
Yes, thanks, Hong. And I'm really fascinated by some of the details that I'm hearing for the first time. But since my passion is really around helping people find what they feel as meaningful work for them or their purpose in life, I am really very much more interested in Lily's own story about the transitions that she has done in her life, and why did you think of what made you become a writer? And so I'm really more interested in your story at this point, although all of the details about Chinatown and San Jose are very, very interesting as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about the story, the transitions? How did you find your purpose in writing?
Okay. I published my first book about 5 years ago, and before that, I always feel like writing, but I was never able to put anything together. A piece of paper with a pen. Here and there, I can write something in the coffee shop, in the airport, but they all got lost. I think it was until I got my first iPad, and then somehow the cloud collect everything I wrote. So finally, everything was all together. So the first short story I wrote was I got stuck in the airport in a little island near Taiwan, and we got stuck for 24 hours. We couldn't go anywhere. So that's when I started to write my first short story, and then I didn't publish it until that. I was belong to one of the organization. We do have a newsletter every week, and then one of the persons saw my article. He say, "Why don't you publish in the newsletter?" I think, "Is that good enough?" He said, "Why not?" And then I published that, and then people say, "Why don't you send it to the newspaper so you can collect some money?" And I still didn't think it was good enough, and sent to the newspaper, and they published it for me, and I started getting confident about my writing and my story. So I know I have a lot of thoughts and story around me, and because I'm a very active person. And after I published my first book, and I found my lost father. I didn't see my father for over 30 years, and I found him. My mom just bumped into him on the street in Taipei. So the next round, I went back to Taiwan, and I had lunch with him, and he said, "I heard that you wrote a book." I say, "Yeah," and then he said, "Let me take a look." I'm the expert on finding out the incorrect words, and that's how I found out. My dad used to be a newspaper reporter, so I don't know if this is in the blood that he used to write. So eventually I become a writer, and then I just keep writing after that. So I have my second book, and I just finished my third Chinese book. So it's just going on and on until this fire scar. I was shocked. I was very shocked when I saw that memorial plaque. I say, how can this be? And this plaque been sitting here and nobody know about it. So I want to broadcast the story. So like what I said before, in order to make it this really fast, to have more people to know, I don't have time to write a documentary. I have to write a fiction. And this is also my first time to writing a fiction because, like I said, my dad used to be a newspaper reporter. So everything I wrote was actually the truth, whatever happened to me. But this time I'm going to make up a story. So I think during that time it was the passion, and it was also pandemic. Nobody goes to work. And I start thinking about the story. I'm thinking about the Chinatown. I'm thinking about San Jose. And thinking about a Fairmont Hotel. And then I start to write. And then my daughter came home and said, "You're going to write another Chinese book?" And I couldn't read. I say, "Well, this is a Chinese story. I should write in Chinese." She said, "No, this is a Chinatown story in the United States, in San Jose. And people in Taiwan is probably not going to care about San Jose. But people over here, the ABC, they are going to care." And I said, "But there are more immigrants." And then she told me, "No, I think there will be more ABC. There will be IBC after ABC." Okay, so she asked me to write this in English. So in the beginning, I was actually writing bilingual, going both to Chinese and English, and then eventually I think I'm going to get a split personality because the language structure doesn't go this way. I have to pick one language. So eventually I picked English. And turned out, I didn't know it was this easy because the typewriter was designed for English. I write really, really fast. All the image is just starting coming to my head. And sometimes when I walk around my neighborhood, one chapter is done. It's all in my head. Sometimes I woke up, I just couldn't wait. I just go right to my computer. I start typing because I have 5 chapters squeezing in my head, ready to come out. I think to answer your question, with every story, every article you write, you really got to have the passion. You want to tell the story. And what is the reason you want to tell the story? In the reason of this, I want people to know. I don't want people to forget. I want people to remember how they used to live. And now the history repeat. They used to bully Chinese. Now they bully us. Things still happen. I mean, how can we improve this? This is really my purpose of writing this book. I hope I answer your question.
Yes, you did. Amazing story. So thank you for sharing that. The way that you're narrating it, I could truly feel the passion. And I really, really appreciate your work on this.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. Jamie, are you still there? I'd like to invite you to speak. Or else I'd like to move to Powell. Powell, thanks for joining us tonight and to find out about Lily's last book and about Lily. Do you have anything to share with us yourself, or any questions, or any comment?
No, I just saw the room. I see Asian American Network. I just want to come here and listen. That's all. That's what I meant to be, because I just
Yes.
I don't know anything
Oh,
about Chinatown, and I think I've been to California once in San Diego. That's it. That's only the Chinatown that I know, and I didn't know that you guys discussed about. So I just come here just to listen. It's okay.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. Thanks for joining us for that matter. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for that matter, so Lily, any particular comment on that? That is the difference between the different Chinatowns in the U.S., right? Is there any particular thing about San Jose that's very different from any other Chinatown? There's the San Francisco Chinatown. Powell just mentioned the San Diego Chinatown. Most people know about New York. Any particular difference you'd like to point out with regards to San Jose? Is it unique?
Well, I've been to San Diego. I didn't know there's a Chinatown there. Actually, I don't even think there's a lot of Chinese food there. Because every time I go, my friend always treat me exactly the same restaurant. So, I came from New York, and New York Chinatown, it's a little bit spread out. It doesn't look like San Francisco Chinatown, which has a gate. You say Chinatown is here, and it's actually San Francisco Chinatown is I would say that is the largest Chinatown in United States, and they are all in the square area. Is enclosed, and in New York, China is along with Canal Street and other. In that side street, it wasn't, it's just some small stores. It wasn't as altogether as San Francisco Chinatown. San Jose Chinatown, as you know, that there's no such thing as a San Jose Chinatown. The last Chinatown now is Japantown right now. Yeah, that's where the Japantown is. And the real Chinatown, it's underneath the Fairmont Hotel, and then now the Fairmont Hotel is going to be gone because they bankrupt. And there's another thing I like to point out is the Chinese cemetery. And throughout my research, back in 1880, Chinese is not supposed to bury with the white folks. So they have their own cemetery. And I actually visited that cemetery on the Capitol Avenue. And I went there twice. The first time I went to the wrong area because I asked the gardener. Gardener said, oh, it's up on the hill. I went up on the hill. It was very nice area. And then I talked to the CHCP. They say, no, you went to the wrong area. It's off on the side. So I went off on the side. It was all flat. I think all the tombstone was all broken because they tried to make it look nice and nice one piece of grass, so everything is underneath. So just some broken stone over there, and there was one probably just one memorial, tombstone there. And then he gave me a map. He said, this is all the names of the people buried underneath. So I look all the names. Everybody's name start with AH and with another word. He said because during that time the Chinese they don't really understand English, so they don't know how to translate their name. So everybody is others, other, you call you always start with R-A-H. So everybody's name is A. So it's very difficult to know who's buried underneath. And then also there's an interesting story I like to tell is that when I was writing this book, I had named the book in very early stage. I already named the book as a Fire Scar because there were two girls in this in my book. One girl is happening current time. The other one is in 1887. They happen all have the fire scar on their neck, exactly the same shape. The current year girl found a picture of the girl in 1887 right in the museum, and so the picture saying just the docent say, look my neck, I have this birthmark. It looks like fire torch. Is that picture in that girl has the exactly same shape? And the docent says, yeah, oh my God, how does this happen? So this is how the story from the current time jump into 87. Eventually they were connected. So this is the whole book to come about. And eventually it was a cycle back. So, and then I thought, and a lot of people ask me, is this the real carnation? I say, well, you really have to read the book. So the fire scar also mean, the fire scar of the Chinatown. And also during that time, I have people helping me to name the book. And one of the popular name is Rising from the Ashes. I like the name, but when I translate to Chinese, it's very, very scary. I actually had nightmare. I had nightmare of all these spirits coming out from Chinatown. They asked me to help them to tell the story. I got so scared. So I had to go to church and ask the elder to pray for me. And the elder said, from now on, you are not going to write anything after nightfall. And he said that, do you remember the story of Iris Chain, the author of the Rape of Nanking, and then eventually she killed herself. You don't want to be that way. So starting from now, after dinner, don't write anything anymore. So after that, I was okay. But I had like 2 or 3 days. I got really, really. I just all of a sudden feel all these spirits coming to me, but after I finished my manuscript, I have some beta reader. They all like the name of Fire Scar better. So eventually, I still use the Fire Scar as the name of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, with so many things buried. I'm also curious, by the way, with so many things buried. I think the people mentioned this gentleman, John Heinlein, right? Can you talk to us about John Heinlein, and also apparently even John Heinlein himself? It's very difficult to find anything about John Heinlein himself, right? So, can you talk about that a little bit? Can you share with us?
Yeah, John Heinlein is a farmer and a businessman, and then he's originally from Germany. He helped Chinese because during that time that he hired Chinese worker and also give them very low rent to live on his property. So a lot of white folks and businessmen don't like him. They don't like John Heinlein. And then after the fire of 1887. whoever the survivor has no place to go, or the Chinese had no place to go. So John Helen helped them to build a new Chinatown, and the new Chinatown was built with brick instead of just wood, and also they reformed the firefighter team and built another 4 Chinese water tower, and they also have guards 24 hours look around the town. However, that after after John Helen died, they named the new Chinatown called Helenville. That's where the Japantown is right now. While I was doing research, I found it very, very strange. I was not able to find much of information about John Helen. I was thinking about looking for his descendant or his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, maybe have them to come forward to write some blog. I couldn't find anybody. And even John Helen, his information was very, very limited. I mean, even today, if you log into Wikipedia, the information is broken. It's not all together. It's really pieces. It's like somebody don't want you to know the quality of the story of all this Chinatown, what happened to this Chinatown. So this makes my research very difficult. That's also another reason I wrote this my book as a fiction. But John Helen is a real character, so I put him into my book as well. Yeah.
Thanks. I'd like to invite the next person now. Norman, thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks for coming up to the stage. I'd like to include you and invite you to share any stories or share any thoughts and feelings, or ask any questions also. Thanks for joining us, and please speak up and participate.
Thanks for inviting me into this room. I was just sitting here just listening to the story, and I haven't read the book or heard anything about it, so this is brand new to me. But from what I'm hearing, it reminds me of Chinatown in Denver. So there was a Chinatown in Denver that was burned to the ground. And I didn't know that there was a Chinatown there until I was running around downtown Denver, and I saw a plaque that says this used to be a Chinatown here. So that kind of reminds me of that. And as well as, right here in the Bay Area, Antioch, right? So Antioch is another East Bay town that had a Chinatown, and then it was, again, burned to the ground. So it just reminds me of that. And then when you're talking about like San Jose, it, like, all I know, because I was born and raised here, I'm born and raised in Oakland. But when we mention San Jose, it reminds me of like Vietnamese food, Korean food. And so I was just wondering if there's any research or information about how the towns in San Jose evolved from not having a Chinatown, but then incorporated all these other Asian diasporas, right? So like you have Vietnamese folks, you have Korean folks, you have Thai, Filipino. So I was just wondering if there was any research into that. And there's tons and tons of Chinatowns. Is there an opportunity to look into those as well for the next book?
Wow, fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. I know quite a few in a couple of sentences there. Yeah, so Lily, anything you'd like to share? And I'd like to invite Michael to keep talking and sharing with us. That's quite a lot of information there to digest. Lily, any?
Yeah, Norman, thank you for mentioning about Denver. The anti-Chinese riot in Denver, it was 1880, and during the Yellow Pearl movement, and Chinese were expelled from their settlement and throughout the West. And then turn out in the city in Tacoma, Eureka, Truckee, and Chico, they were all, cast out. And you mentioned about Antioch. It was on the news that they Chinese dig out the tunnel because they were not allowed to go out at night. So if they have to, they actually get killed if they walk on the street at night. So they had to dig out the tunnel from one place to another. I think the mayor just came out and apologized, to the Chinese. And then you were mentioning about this Vietnamese food and Korean food. I think those happened after 1900. It was after the Chinese San Jose Chinatown was burned to the ground. They were all later, probably around 1931. So they were later immigrants. So that's what I know, but I don't know exactly, when they started. But I know the first settlement was Chinese and eventually got took over by Japanese in that area of the town.
I like to inject my own question here. And forgive my ignorance. So my impression has always been that Chinese immigrants living in Chinatown basically have figured that to put up an exotic, an exotic setting and ambiance, they can attract tourists and tourists who come for dinner or lunch or for food or to the shop. And so the thing is, I didn't realize that the hard feelings. So are they competing with other businesses that so that they would attract this animosity, or something happened in that time that where the economy is difficult and people compete for work or something like that triggers the violence, a little bit like today. I mean, that's sort of the kind of questions I have, right? So was there any particular economic hardship that triggers the violence out of competition?
Yeah, the reason they hired Chinese labor, it was because there was no more slave, right? After Lincoln released all the slaves, so who is going to work on the railroad? So they have to hire the outsiders. And Chinese, they are really dependable because they work really hard, and a lot of time they build their own tool. Okay, because now was everything to provide. Just talking about the railroad itself, you move from one place to another. You basically live in the tent, and they cook their own food, and their wages is 30%. It's 30% lower than the white folks and other people. So eventually, they think the Chinese is taking over their work. So that's mostly the hatred is coming out. So they make all kinds of rules, and they make the new law. They have the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882. They say their wives cannot come over to United States to join them. So basically, this is it's a cleaning of the race, because if the women couldn't come into the country, they cannot have children. So it's really ethnic cleansing, So at that time, the Chinatown was mostly bachelor, and also they don't like Chinese. There's another reason, because usually Chinese are smaller, and they were in a queue. Their hair, they were in a queue in their back. And they are all bachelor. They think all the men in Chinatown they are homosexual, so they don't like them. Okay, and they also think they are really filthy. They create some health issue for the city. So with all these reasons, they driven them out, kick them out, and kill them. Really brutal. It's really brutal.
Understood. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I'd like to invite Johnny. Johnny, thanks for joining us tonight also, and thanks for coming up to the stage. Please share your comments or stories or any questions.
Sure. Thank you for thank you for the invitation and the event. It's a nice platform to exchange ideas and share our thoughts. I've been here in the States, East Coast as a tourist, and also West Coast as long-term, various cities. So I've been paying attention to the various the local culture and demographics, including Chinese and the Japanese, all the Asian races, and I'm more than Asian races. So I feel what's called Chinatown. Chinatown is actually a Canton town. It's not really Chinatown. The reason is they came here as a physical labor, and most of them were illiterate. So they do not really represent them. They just represent Canton, that area. And even now in Chinatown, the primary working language is probably Cantonese. If you speak the Putonghua or Beijing, the standard Chinese, official Chinese dialogue or pronunciation, no, you speak Chinese, which they meant you should speak in Cantonese. so it's just very regional. It's a small area. Secondly, they were nowadays a lot of people immigrate from China, and they from various parts they are well educated, like you and me, and we just rarely go to Chinatown. Maybe sometime go there. Okay, have a good food and shopping for some groceries. It's not a must to go there. There are various grocery shops outside Chinatown, and also good Asian food and Asian restaurants, Asian groceries available a lot of places. So Chinatown is just a historical monument, but it's not that. It's just for people, I guess think about it's kind of fossil to remind people of the past. When the American built the railroad time and gold mining at that moment, but that's just very small. It's not really modernized. It cannot represent what the Asian demographics nowadays and Asian and what they actually. Certainly, for the Chinatown people themselves, if they have any chance, they're going to try to encourage their next generation go outside Chinatown, because China not much opportunity. They want go outside, be a lawyer, be an engineer, be a doctor, make better money, and go to the. So that's my thought on this. And besides that, I think it's. Okay, that should be it for now. I do have more things to share, but that's a little bit different topic. So.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. Yes, we do want to not dilute everything and then concentrate on the stories that Lily has in her book. But within some limits, I think we'd like to invite everybody to share. And thanks for sharing. Really appreciate that. I think that enriches the conversation here. Absolutely. I want to circle back to Lily on this, right? So clearly the topic here, with the fire scar starting from the title, and clearly the stories here, these are tragic stories for sure. Okay, no doubt about it. I'd like to ask you a different question here. That is, in all of this that you have researched, is there any particular sign or element of hope or are there moments of joy at any point in this whole history that you found in your research or for that matter in the stories in your book?
Okay, I think that what Johnny said was is very accurate because the modern Chinese and it was different than the old-fashioned Chinatown. I came here. I was in a college when I was in the 1980s. There was no modern Chinatown. Even San Francisco right now, there's called so-called New Chinatown, and also in the in New York. There's also a new Chinatown. But during that time, it was only Cantonese style Chinatown. I remember that time I go to a market, you have to speak Cantonese. If you don't, they don't sell things to you. Yeah, so somehow I have a very special feeling because on the weekend, if I want to see some Chinese or have Chinese food, that's where to go, the Chinatown. So that's probably where the passion I have. But right now, just like what Johnny says, that the Chinatown parents probably ask their children to go outside of Chinatown to be an engineer, to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, and that is what's happening right now. And in San Jose, I was mentioning that book, we're in the center of the Silicon Valley. In the Silicon Valley, it's all high tech. And we have so many high tech engineers. We have, robot. We have electrical cars. And I mean, even during the pandemic, you watch TV. They interview doctors. There are so many Chinese doctors. That's something to cheer about because we no longer blue collar worker. We are no longer, laundryman and fruit picker and miners and laborers and fix the railroads and generation after generation we become very smart, become white collar level, and we have a political leader. I think that's something to cheer about. And rising from the ashes, they burn us down to the ground, but we're still there. We're still there. Just like a phoenix, we spray our wing, we show what we have, we are still very strong standing, in this country. Yeah. So that's what my thought is.
Thanks, Lily.
Can I make
I'd like to invite, so
This is Diana.
yes,
Yes.
please.
Can I? Yes,
do
just
chime in.
make it.
Yes.
Yeah, Lily. Yes, I've been listening to the story, and you really resonate with me. The story about Chinatown, about San Francisco, about San Jose. We live in this area. I think that Chinatown represents the culture, and also it's this great community. Even in the San Francisco Chinatown, many of the great people coming out from that place and area. I know some very good friends, and they're still there. They built a better Chinatown, and also like Mayor Ed Lee. Many of the elected officials and those people are really from Chinatown. And I think that the meaning of what Lily is doing is very important. It's amazing that we know our history and we know where we are today. And also we know what the future is going to be. So thank you, Lily, for such a wonderful job you did.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, writing this book. I think this story was seldom told because this is also the first time I heard about this story. Anti-Asian hate crime happened long time ago, and it's happening again. So we should really pay attention to this and think about why it happened, in what kind of circumstance it's happened, and what we can do to prevent it happening again. So Lily, kudos to your great job. And also I heard that your father is a reporter. I think it's really in your blood because I know that you have a Chinese book. Yeah, really in your blood. I know your Chinese book, and I think I was on one of your event before. And yeah, you did so many things for our community. That is so wonderful. I think that
thank you.
Yeah, truly you have the love in your heart to brought this story to the public. Today's discussion is really important because not by listening to this story and Lily's personal story, but for all of us, not only Asian Americans, but all the minorities in the United States. what we can learn from this story and prevent this happening again. I think that's the meaning for this. And I want to thanks to Han and Sandy because they've been preparing this, and also thanks to Sandy who really arranged all this and invited Lily to share this story. I would encourage all the friends here to follow each other in this room because this is a really the good opportunity to for us to make new friends and expand our network, and also hit the greenhouse on the top to